Hello, and welcome to the webinar, How Winning Teams Use AI to Turn BFCM Shoppers into Repeat Buyers. My name is Megan Billingsley, and we're glad you could join us today. Today, we're diving into one of the most critical challenges marketers face right now, turning one-time seasonal shoppers into repeat buyers. In the most competitive 6 weeks of the year, marketing teams are stretched thinner than ever. Smaller budgets, rising acquisition costs, and consumers whose behavior and intentions change by the hour. The good news is AI has reached a point where it can meaningfully help. It can build smarter segments, scale hundreds of micro campaigns, adapt campaigns in real time, and best of all, AI now starts where marketers do, with a specific goal, versus at just the creative or optimization stage. During this session, Simon.ai will break down 3 AI plays leading brands are using right now to meaningfully impact repeat revenue during peak season. We're joined today by 2 speakers. Catherine Toll is head of solutions at Simon.ai. She focuses on helping enterprises use agentic AI to improve targeting and personalization. Paige Rotar is director of professional services at Simon.ai. She leads initiatives that empower brands to deliver personalized experiences at scale through the power of data, identity, and artificial intelligence. With deep expertise in lifecycle marketing and AI-driven strategy, Paige helps enterprise teams unlock the full potential of their customer data. Before I hand over the presentation, we want to let you know that Simon.ai is offering viewers an exclusive 1-hour AI use case workshop just for your team. You can scan the QR code here on your screen or go to simon.ai/workshop to sign up. In this workshop, you'll explore high-impact use cases tailored to your marketing goals, learn how to combine customer and real-world contextual signals for your type of business to create more relevant campaigns, and identify ways to help your team move and scale faster with AI. It's the perfect time post-Black Friday to have an AI workshop so you can keep the momentum going into the new year and beyond. So scan at any time to sign up. And with that, we'll get started. So Paige, I'll hand it off to you.
Amazing. Thanks, Megan. So I'm going to kick us off by first starting to talk about the peak season pressure cooker that we are all too familiar with. So we have increased competition where brands are really competing for the same consumer wallet. And at the same time, at a time when marketers are really expected to scale the most, we have increased ad costs. We're also competing against the reality of smaller teams and smaller budgets. And so it's really critical for marketers and brands to understand exactly who these purchasers are. So what are they in the market for? What does their engagement look like over the past 7 days or the past month? What is their sentiment? Are they engaging with the support chat? If so, what do those conversations look like? Are they engaging with paid social? What types of ads, as well as what's happening in the world around them. So for example, if it's been super rainy the past 7 days in a customer's particular region and they go and purchase a rain jacket, maybe they're not actually purchasing a gift for the upcoming season, but rather they're just a customer that's looking for something for themselves because they're in need of it based on what's actually happening where they live.
And I'd add one more thing, actually, Paige, about the pressure cooker aspect, which especially around the increased competition. One thing I think we all see in our daily lives, at least if you're like me and you're on social media, is like the dupe culture and how easy it is to commoditize products. So whereas like it used to be fairly easy to differentiate and like maintain a competitive advantage for a little while, it's becoming increasingly hard to do that, like purely from a product perspective. And then even as like, let's say like ad costs are increasing, certain elements of creative, like the ability to generate kind of like a wide variety of customized creative, that's actually getting easier because of AI. So there are certain like traditional advantages like product differentiation, really strong creative and a larger creative budget that are just becoming increasingly commoditized. And so just relative value as like competitive advantages is increasingly shrinking. So we're all kind of having to reframe the way that we think about kind of like what gets companies ahead in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And that's a great transition into why like this context that we're talking about actually matters. It's kind of threefold where brands are trying to understand like why, consumers are purchasing. Are they purchasing during Black Friday, Cyber Monday because they're looking for a gift for someone, labeling them as a gifter? Are they just there for the deal? Are they purchasing from particular brands because they have a killer deal going on for Black Friday? Or do they just need something? And they're already, a loyal customer, and something is happening that makes them, need to purchase a product. And so you'll see here on the left, these are really different behavioral attributes that marketers generally look at today. So things like, did they only buy because there was a deal? Have they purchased prior to Black Friday, Cyber Monday? What exactly are they browsing or engaging with in terms of marketing content, whether on site or with particular marketing emails or different marketing communications? And then what are, their demographics? However, the context on the right is really context that simon.ai can help unlock. So being able to take all of these different inferences and making different audiences through AI or leveraging AI and understanding, was this a gift based on what the consumer has actually done or what they have, previously purchased or what they're engaging with on the site. Is it actually snowing where they live, or does it snow where they live? Are they preparing their own wardrobe, for the upcoming weather season? Did they buy for a special occasion or holiday travel? So what else are they looking at on the site, et cetera? And being able to leverage AI to actually make these different inferences so that marketers can actually personalize these different messages. But then additionally, a second challenge is being able to, once we infer who these people actually are and why they're purchasing, being able to then send those personalized communications at the right time. So understanding what's happening in the world around them to be able to make sure that we're sending the messaging at the right moment. And being able to take it then even one step further and break it down into personalized messaging based on these individual personas without having to increase work, for the marketer. So anything you'd add there, Catherine?
Yeah, I think I would just say, it's an interesting paradox because marketers have access to so much more data now than they had like 10 years ago, obviously. So if you're looking at like, have they purchased prior to Black Friday? You will probably have browsing, click data. You might be able to pull in some trend data, promotions you were running. Weather is like a little bit more challenging as like a very different third-party source. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, it's all given rise to this like very confusing situation where you actually have the data to figure out a lot of this why behind your customers, but it's like much harder to figure out how to actually use it in practice. And I have definitely found, customers, and I used to work for a consumer goods company in analytics, and the analysis paralysis was like very, very real, where we had access to much more data than we could ever need that covered the vast majority of our use cases, but we did not have the tooling that could really process that at scale. And we were just limited, as human beings by how much time we had to dedicate it to it, how much like mental bandwidth we even had to wrap our minds around like that amount of data. And so, yeah, getting to that why is important, but also being able to kind of like systematically do that across your entire customer database and with all those attributes is the real challenge. And so obviously, like I said, like if you could do this, you probably would be doing it. So why is that level of personalization hard to scale? And when we say level of personalization, what you heard Paige talking about was not just the kind of like why in aggregate. Like a lot of people think about why in campaigns, and I think they think about like doing causal analysis for like, did a campaign work? Did it not work? And then I try to scale up that finding. But like what we're really trying to get to is the why behind every single decision that your customers are individually making at a given point in time. We're trying to understand that and then use that to kind of project forward. And that's going to be challenging for a number of reasons. Like number one, you have this whole universe of customer data and product data, and it's hard enough to leverage even the super obvious things. Like let's talk about like rules-based segmentation. Like rules-based segmentation is like pretty common in most MarTech tools. But you're still not able to like do that across all the different data points in your catalog, let alone kind of look at what are the actual signals and patterns that matter that I'm probably not capturing with like a true false criteria in one of my audiences. And then you have real world signals. So you have all those signals and patterns from your actual data, but then you have like no idea what's happening in 98% of like a customer's actual real world experience. So like, for instance, if I, am going to the mall today, like there's probably a good amount of my decision-making that's affected by what the upcoming weather is for the next 2-3 3 weeks, a month. Denver, where I live, is having an unbelievably warm fall. So I'm actually not going to get like a lot of winter items in the way that I normally would be doing at this time. But obviously it's really hard for marketers who are trying to talk to me to actually know that that's affecting my decisions. And the last piece is going to be just like slow and manual activation. And this is something everybody's familiar with, which is just that your tooling can't move as fast as your customers and as fast as you want to. So at the end of the day, like I said, if this level of personalization was easy, we would all be doing it. And these are kind of the three core problems that we see overall. And just data you can't process at scale, lacking that real world context, and then just being able to move as fast as your customers are evolving. And Paige, would you add anything to that?
I would just say, like, even if marketers were able to do this on in a manual way, what we're seeing, and I actually, this reminds me of a conversation I was having with a customer recently, where they're able to understand, if a customer's purchasing patterns are changing. So for example, if they were a yearly buyer and now they are considered a monthly buyer, or if they were a weekly buyer and now they are a monthly buyer, they both of those customers fall within that monthly buyer category. However, it's really, really hard to understand if that is good or bad, because they're not able to see if the movement is moving from a week to monthly or from a year to monthly, where one is great because purchasing is getting more frequently, where the other is not so great because purchasing is getting less. And so that is kind of another inference or signal that AI can really support with, is helping to understand, okay, even if we've identified these patterns, is it good or bad sentiment? And so just reminded me of a recent conversation I was having.
That's super interesting. That's a great example of like, yeah, the directionality matters, not just like the current state. So the nice thing is that why we are here today is to talk about AI, because if we were just going to tell you that you still can't solve these problems, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. So these are kind of the top 3 AI plays that we've identified that tend to work for different types of our customers. And one thing I want to emphasize is that it's not 1 or 2 or 3. It's also in some ways like not even a progression of like one is significantly better than the other or one is significantly easier than the other. It's much more so about, what fits into your existing process, the kind of tooling that you have access to or would prioritize. And so starting from the left, AI-powered audiences. So when I think of this one, I'm thinking a little bit more still like in the realm of rules-based segmentation, but with some intelligent attributes underneath. So if you think about today, like maybe your data science team builds propensity models, churn likelihood models, et cetera. It's really about like, how do you scale those up so that when you do rules-based filtering, you're able to do it on 2 or 3 intelligent models about your customers, as opposed to like the millions of signals that you have that like could in some ways influence churn propensity, et cetera. So it's just going to make that rules-based segmentation much more scalable and intelligent. Second one's going to be contextual activation. So we already mentioned this earlier, but you only know oftentimes as much as your brand knows about a customer, and that is very specific and often very limited. So AI is now going to allow us to bring in context in a really scalable and individualized way, so you can understand how each consumer's real world could potentially be affecting their decisions. And the third one, it has a little star on it because it's probably the coolest one, quote unquote. I don't even want to say it's the most advanced, because sometimes advanced like implies that it's harder to do than the others. It's really just a question of the kind of tooling you have in place. But synthetic customers is about really getting down on a one-to-one basis. So instead of grouping people into segments, kind of no matter how intelligently they've been filtered, you're actually making individualized decisions about each customer in your database. So it's a bit more like, if you think about like the very high level idea of, I want to have an individual conversation with every person to ask them if I should send them something, synthetic consumers is what is going to get you the closest to that. So with that, Paige, I will go ahead and turn it over to you to talk through these in some more detail.
Amazing. So I'll start with the first play, which is building and scaling actionable signals, and really being able to, as Catherine mentioned, create those dynamic audiences by inferring from all of the data that you have available today. So what's really holding marketers back with creating these audiences and segmenting on these consumers is it's very manual. So it takes a lot of time, even if it is possible. It's slow and it's rules based. And so what's happening is these different segments that marketers are creating today are very static. And so they're not able to keep up with the changing conditions of that first party data. What is the customer actually doing? And also, changing conditions in the world that we'll talk more about here in a second. With the AI-powered approach, what's happening is AI is able to make it automatic, fast, and adaptive. And so it's taking these manual static segments that are very, very rules-based and making them dynamic so that they can actually react to the changing environment and what's happening with all of these different first-party and third-party signals that it's receiving, making it much, much easier to actually personalize at scale with while also at the same time reducing the time needed, from a marketer to actually put these audiences together.
Yeah, Paige, I think on this reminds me, I was talking to a company earlier today that sells products. They have some e-commerce, but they sell products through retailers a lot of the time. And they have super limited data about the folks that are buying, they have very few kind of post-purchase data points because people tend to buy that product. Occasionally they will register it and that gives them some data about them. But oftentimes it feels like very much a black box when folks are going kind of through a retailer. But the great thing about things like AI-powered attributes is that they're able to start filling gaps in large aspects of your customer database by extrapolating from that more limited set of data that you are getting from those customers who do something like register that product. So the other thing I would add here is it's letting you be more intelligent about the information that customers are giving you, about themselves, but it's also giving you methods to scale up that information to other customers who are otherwise a real black box. You don't have much information about them in general. But as long as you have some basic demographic information, some basic pattern data, you can start attributing that to or extending those attributes to other customers. I would just say it's also a really good way to think about, closing those gaps in your customer data, in addition to speaking more intelligently to people who have actually given you that information personally.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And as we're receiving that data and AI is making those different inferences and filling those gaps, what we can also do by as those gaps are being filled is also create different AI fields within, for the customer or marketer rather to leverage for that personalization and those personalized experiences. And so with the AI-powered approach and being able to fill those different gaps, you can actually enter a prompt, something like, I want to generate an AI field that describes the persona or lifestyle of the customer who might purchase XYZ product. And so what's happening is AI is analyzing data as it comes in. So it's taking different aspects of the product catalog, what people are purchasing, as well as what they're engaging with on the site, as well as different marketing content like an email, SMS, also dependent on the channel, different product reviews. Are they positive? Are they negative? As well as any customer feedback that it might be receiving. And it's able to uncover from all of this different data that it has access to, different hidden patterns. So identifying different themes, detecting sentiment shifts. So if this has been, a very loyal customer and recently they started giving negative reviews, understanding why, so that we can make sure that we fix that. Revealing different customer needs. So what are they engaging with on content over and over? To your point earlier, Catherine, it's not very cold yet in Denver. However, hopefully the season changes soon, so that we actually understanding, okay, now different conditions are changing. And so customer needs are changing as well, and being able to spot early, churn or loyalty in that case. From there, it then takes those hidden patterns and assigns those actionable attributes. So creating those actual AI fields, such as different customer personas of, this person is likely to ski this season, different channel preferences based on engagement, et cetera. And from there, being able to create dynamic audiences. So leveraging these different AI attributes and creating different dynamic audiences that we can then take and personalize based on the different personas that they've been labeled, different channel preferences, as well as what they're likely to purchase, and create those personalized experiences.
The other thing that I would say on this, actually, I'd say two things. So first of all, something that Paige highlighted earlier, like product reviews, customer feedback, the ability to scalably process like unstructured data now is a major benefit of AI, and like should probably be something that you look for in any AI tool you're considering, because those data sources that have historically been somewhat like qualitative or just kind of like directional manual indicators should be able to you should be able to incorporate that into more like quantitative analysis or AI powered analysis at this point. And the second thing I'd just say is sometimes obviously there's a perception that AI can be a black box a bit. So, you tell an LLM that you want to create a certain kind of field on your data and it creates that field, but like you're not actually sure what went into generating that. You aren't sure about the accuracy of the field. And I would just say that any AI tool that you are looking at should provide some measure of observability. So if the AI tool can't kind of provide a logical explanation for the field that it generated, explain what field it was generated based off of, if it can't show you sample values and they clearly correspond to like example personas in your catalog, I would say there's probably a better tool out there. Like it shouldn't feel like a black box to you.
Absolutely. Makes leveraging AI a little less scary in that way. All right. So the second one is contextual activation. So once we have been able to take all of this structured and unstructured first-party data, being able to actually understand when to send these personalized communications based on these inferred audience. And so what we're able to do, or what AI rather is able to do, is it's able to merge that customer data and those personas with what's happening in the real world. So things like, has it been super rainy, for the past week? Is there a big snowstorm predicted, for the weekend? Different social trends that are happening, as well as different major or even micro events that are happening within different regions, and being able to send relevant communications based on what's actually happening. Also being able to detect intent based on these real moments. And so if it's going to be rainy, or if there's a big snowstorm coming, people that are searching for ski gear, online, understanding, okay, they are likely going to purchase this because there is a big snowstorm coming, and therefore I need to personalize based on this. And then actually automating those different moments. So different weather, different events, different trends are happening in different regional areas all around the world. And so understanding where do these different customers live, these different inferred audiences, and understanding when to send these timely messages and automate them based on exactly what's happening, and creating these different moment triggers that are then taking this personalization and making it actually relevant for the end consumers.
Yeah, and I'll double down on my Denver example, because I do think that like weather is the easiest way to explain some of this, or maybe the most broadly relevant. It's like, if you are advertising to anyone in Denver about parkas right now, in past years, you would probably be doing great use of your dollars. You would just be burning your money at the moment. Like no one is buying a parka. But if you were to know when it is actually going to snow here, finally, you better believe everybody's going to be rushing all of a sudden to like get a parka or get their like cold weather clothing. So instead of spreading out those dollars and kind of like wasting them basically throughout the fall, if you're able to target those to like that specific period when there is going to be a lot of frantic shopping because people either did not think ahead or just like it truly hasn't been relevant, you're going to be able to like disproportionately, if you invest your dollars there, like perform relative to competition. And so again, like even as Josh earlier, like products are commoditized, like the ability to kind of like trigger on that individual moment using great customer data, great context data, like that's not commoditized yet. And so if I have 100 black parkas that I could be looking at, I'm probably going to get the one that someone, doubles down on paid advertising to me about. So shout out, that is. But anyway, so I would just say, like, again, as a real world example, weather is like, there's a great one.
So we may have the same black LL Bean parka. And so Last thing on contextual activation for now is we want to make sure that we're creating, this flywheel that as the conditions change, we're making sure that what we're doing is dynamic as well, or what marketers are doing is dynamic as well. And so audiences are continually refreshing automatically as different conditions change, whether that's third-party, weather data and actual weather conditions are changing, or actual conditions within the first-party data as well, based on what the different consumers are searching for on site, et cetera, and changing them and making sure that these audiences are actually dynamic. From there, making sure that the campaigns also adapt in real time to match context. So if there, was a big snowstorm predicted for the weekend and it's no longer, expected to snow, making sure that we are changing the content based on what's relevant and what's happening in the real world as well. And then from there, post Black Friday, Cyber Monday engagement, that engagement is actually driven by the propensity and relevance of the dynamic changes that are happening. So really resulting in those hyper relevant engagements and personalized experiences. Fantastic. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Catherine to talk about the third AI play here that is really going to bring the first and second together, which you'll understand here in a moment.
Yeah, so synthetic consumers, which is a very scientific way to say basically just like speaking one-to-one with like an AI version of your customers. So we talked earlier about how like AI fields, let's say, are in some ways like allowing you to leapfrog like traditional rule-based segmentation, where you were looking at something like, has someone bought a sweater in the past 6 months? If so, I will advertise to them about a sweater. Like that is like the most basic. You then have AI fields that maybe is, adding a little more intelligence to that. So like, yes, someone bought a sweater, but was it, their personal category? Like, was it a kid sweater that an adult bought? And they're probably not an actual personal sweater buyer. And so like you get intelligent fields that would allow you to say like, okay, adult sweaters are, kid sweaters are or are not someone's actual preferred product category personally. So you can filter based on things like that, which are more AI powered, but really like the major unlock is, can you just ask a customer that? So instead of like trying to infer from like their demographics and whether or not they seem to purchase both adult and kid clothes, like trying to triangulate who they are and what they care about, like what if you could just ask them? I should say, trying to triangulate all of them as a group, like to define them by that one score, like what if you should just ask them? And so that's what synthetic consumers are. So they're basically a dynamic model of your customer. So if you think about like right now, a lot of us think about customers as sort of a collection of data points. Like this person has spent $3,000 with me. They tend to buy on Sundays. Even being able to say they tend to buy on Sundays is like a step more advanced than a lot of folks. But they have historically spent from like a credit card company at these specific retailers. And the idea is that you should go from thinking about them as a set of data points to a persona you can actually interact with. So that's what a synthetic consumer is. And it's really just like an AI powered version of a customer you can have a conversation with. So once you're able to do that, you can start asking them questions about products in your catalog and you're planning to run. And instead of having that sort of like Boolean logic of, yes, you fit into the bucket of people I think would be interested in this, or no, you don't, they're able to basically, via that AI persona, respond to you with an interest score. So if you were to ask me on a scale of, 0 to 100, how interested am I in coffee mugs? I would say very. I have a crazy stash of crazy like colorful coffee mugs in my kitchen. And if you work for Etsy, you probably know that. So my like relevance would score very high there. And then I'd probably be routed through like a relevant campaign. And the third step is going to be that context aware activation. So great. Etsy is able to say to me, hey, Catherine, do you be interested in these mugs? And I respond, yes, you can see I've bought 25 mugs and they are all folk art themed or something. So yes, I would probably be interested. And then you might have some kind of like context trigger for that. So if it ever gets cold again in Denver, like I might think about going and buying another mug for my hot coffee because I'm still drinking iced coffee right now. But so if you were to trigger a campaign to me at that moment, I'd probably be more likely to engage with that kind of content. So if you were to say to me, I know it's going to be 25 in Denver tomorrow, I know you're going to be switching to hot coffee. It's also going to feel a lot less intrusive. Like A, I'm probably more likely to respond to it. And B, I at least don't feel like you're spamming my inbox with something that you're sending to 1,000 other people. But so the point of all of that is to say that synthetic consumers, an AI persona for each of your customers based on the data you have about them that can actually converse with you about level of interest, as opposed to just being kind of like assigned into a bucket based on a few data points that you have about that person. Paige, anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, I think you really hit the nail on the head, but that it just takes, there's nothing wrong with number one or number two. It's just kind of taking them one step further. It's fantastic that we can infer and understand these different dynamic audiences, such as, loyal customers or gift givers or deal seekers. But when it comes down to it, like, we are still all very different. So everyone that's falling into those different deal seeker buckets or loyalist buckets still have many different attributes or like that are very different. And so it also allows us, the synthetic consumer also allows us to better personalize like product recommendations and make sure that we are actually sending different recommendations that are relevant to that individual persona and not just the holistic bucket.
Yeah, I would say, even if you look at the third step here, that context-aware reactivation, that like pretty much is bucket 2, just like being incorporated in here. So definitely what Paige said, there is nothing wrong with doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 1, 2, and 3. It really just depends on like what technology is in your stack, what kind of data do you have to power this? Because I'll be honest, like synthetic consumers, it is going to take a little more data probably to be able to get that really strong biography and profile. But yeah, all of them like can and should be used potentially together. And it's really just a question of, where are you at in terms of the tools you have, the data you have, et cetera. All right. So with that, we can go ahead and quickly kind of like sum back up. I think this honestly really just goes back to exactly what Paige was saying, which is you can and should do all 3. If one of these were significantly worse than the other, we probably wouldn't be talking about it. So for number 1, it's again, building actionable audience signals with AI fields. So it's going to be the closest to traditional segmentation, but just with more intelligent fields and also more scalable fields. So a lot of you will have data science teams that do churn propensity, next purchase propensity, et cetera. But you need a lot of resources to develop models like that. A really strong AI fields tool will be able to do that on the fly. So you don't have to rely on your data team for every single one of those metrics. Second, combining those signals with contextual data to power moments. So again, going back to like, you shouldn't do 1 or 2, like 1 and 2. So combining those AI signals with that contextual data. So for instance, on the right here, you've got folks who are going to experience a cold snap. Maybe it's finally going to be ski season. Like that's the time you should be talking to them, but you shouldn't be talking to everyone, indiscriminately. You should be talking to people who you have an AI field, like that, indicates that person is likely to engage in some kind of like, base layer apparel content. So maybe they bought ski equipment before, outdoor winter equipment, et cetera. And then the third one's going to be synthetic consumers. So this is sort of like the most fun one to talk about, but again, should do all 3. And that's really going to translate what you see there on the left. Again, someone being just like a collection of data points into what's on the right, which is an actual person you can, I think technically we say interrogate, which is like a little bit aggressive. You're just asking them a question, but that you can actually interrogate within your database to ask them on a truly like one-to-one level, how relevant is something to you? And should I reach out to you about it? So Paige, do you have anything to add there?
I think you tied it together really nicely.
Well, with that, Paige, I can pass it off to you for a little promo here.
Yeah, amazing. So as you've heard today, we have 3 plays for how we can increase those second purchases after Black Friday, Cyber Monday actually wraps, but also just how you can use these plays in your day-to-day. So even in 2026 and beyond, how can we help you leverage AI to really understand who your customer is by inferring and making these dynamic audiences, being able to then actually take these relevant audiences and send communications at the right time, and then taking it one step further and creating these mini personas that you can even hyper personalize without, creating additional work for marketers. And so we would love to talk with you more about your individual business and your individual use case with an AI use case workshop where we can actually explore some and recommend some AI use cases that might help you all increase those second purchases and create those loyal customers post the holidays. So with that, I will pass it back over to Megan and let her wrap everything up.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Catherine and Paige, for that insightful presentation. That does it for us today. But before we sign off, I just wanted to thank you, our audience, for watching. Today's webinar will continue to be available on demand if you want to review anything that was discussed. Have a great day.